I didn't come to Silver Pines for community. I came for quiet. After 22 years of service, first as a beat cop, later in narcotics, and finally as a federal internal affairs agent, I was done. Done with politics, done with paperwork, and especially done with people. The cabin I bought wasn't just off the grid, it was off the radar. 1 acre, lake-facing, wrapped in pine trees and silence. So when a polished white SUV pulled into my gravel drive the morning after I moved in, I knew the peace wouldn't last long. Out stepped a woman in a crisp white blouse, beige slacks, and heels too high for the terrain. She held a leather binder like it was a Bible and moved with the confidence of someone used to not being told no. I barely had time to close the tailgate on my truck before she was on me. "Hi there," she chirped. "You must be the new homeowner." "I'm Karen Bishop, president of the Silver Pines Homeowners Association." I offered a polite nod. "Mark Ryland." "Well, Mark, welcome to the community. We're thrilled to have you here." Now, I just wanted to swing by with a standard welcome packet. Our HOA prides itself on order, appearance, and respectful neighbor conduct. This packet outlines our bylaws, fee structure, landscaping, expectations, and the community covenant. She handed me a thick folder stuffed with laminated pages, color-coded charts, and a glossy cover featuring a smiling family beneath an HOA banner. I didn't take it. "I think there's been a misunderstanding," I said, keeping my tone neutral. "My property isn't in the HOA." Her smile froze. "Oh, it's all part of the same development. This entire street is governed by Silver Pines. I checked the property records before I bought. My lot was originally a Ranger cabin built before the subdivision. It's not included in your governing documents. No HOA fees. No obligations." Karen blinked, as if the concept short-circuited her wiring. "But everyone on this street participates," she insisted. "We can't make exceptions. It sets a terrible precedent." "Not my concern," I replied. "I didn't sign up for your rules." She shifted her weight, grip tightening on the binder. "Mr. Ryland, you may not want to join now, but I assure you, non-compliance tends to create ... tension. We believe in community cohesion." I stepped forward slightly, making it clear the conversation was over. "I believe in legal boundaries. My title's clean. You can check with the county if you'd like. Now if you'll excuse me." Her smile vanished altogether as she turned and walked back to her SUV. I noticed how her eyes lingered on the motorcycle parked near my porch. My Harley Road King Sherry red and chrome, purring like a lion the night before when I'd taken it for a ride down the lake road. I shut the cabin door and locked it, even though I didn't need to. The welcome was anything but. The next morning, I found a yellow paper tucked under my windshield wiper. "Notice of violation, non-compliant vehicle storage." I laughed. The bike was parked in my own driveway. 3 days later came the letter, unapproved paint color. My cabin was forest brown, same as the trees around it. No one could see it from the road unless they squinted. The week after that, a warning for lawn maintenance deficiency. I hadn't mowed because I'd left the native grass intact, as per conservation code. I checked with the county. There were no citations, no complaints, just letters from the HOA and all signed by the same name, Karen Bishop. I made no effort to respond. No calls, no arguments. That's what people like her wanted to fight. They thought they could win by wearing pew down, but I'd dealt with tougher than Karen in my career. Gang bosses, dirty officers, federal prosecutors with chips on their shoulders. You don't survive in law enforcement by rising to every bait. Still, it didn't stop her from escalating. 2 weeks later I came back from a grocery run to find a laminated sign zip-tied to my fence gate. Final notice: refusal to join HOA will result in enforcement action. That night, as I sat on my porch sipping black coffee and watching the sun dissolve behind the tree line, I saw her again, standing on the sidewalk across the street, arms folded, watching, calculating, planning her next move. I didn't flinch. I simply leaned back and waited. Let her try. Let her escalate. People like Karen always overplayed their hand. She just had no idea whose hand she was messing with. I kept my head down for the next few days, not because I was intimidated, but because I wanted to see how far Karen would go. People like her always expose themselves if you give them enough rope. On Wednesday morning, I noticed a new sign on my mailbox: HOA compliance check in progress. It wasn't issued by any county office. I called to confirm. It was homemade, likely printed from Karen's home office with the same faux authority tone she used in person. That afternoon, a black SUV idled across the street. Inside sat a man with a clipboard and a neon vest. He didn't exit the vehicle, sat there for 30 minutes, taking photos of my cabin yard and motorcycle. By Friday, I'd had enough. I walked to the county zoning office and requested a full record of local code enforcement complaints against my address. Nothing had been filed officially. Whatever Karen was doing, it was entirely off the books, unauthorized, unlawful, and utterly foolish. That night, I sat on my porch again, watching the fireflies blink over the tree line. Just after 10, headlights appeared at the far end of the gravel road. A sheriff's cruiser rolled in slowly, tires crunching over loose stone. My stomach tightened, not with fear, but with irritation. I already knew who called. The deputy stepped out and approached, hand resting lightly on his holster. He was young mid-twenties, maybe with a clean shave and a hesitancy in his step that told me this wasn't his idea. I stayed seated, sipping from a mug. Evening, sir. We received a call from a Ms. Karen Bishop. Says there's been a disturbance here, possible trespassing onto HOA managed land, and failure to comply with community safety protocols. I raised an eyebrow. She mentioned trespassing. Yes, sir. She claims you've erected an unauthorized structure extending onto common land. You mean my privacy fence? He nodded. That fence has stood for 12 years, and the land's mine. It predates the HOA. It's all recorded with the county. She should know that by now. The deputy shifted. Well, she's saying she has authority as HOA president. She doesn't, I said, standing. And you're being pulled into a civil matter with no legal merit. He looked a bit uncomfortable. I'm just here to assess the situation. I'd appreciate if you had any proof of your claim. I went inside and returned with the property deed, boundary map, and the original zoning certificate. The documents were clean, stamped, an official dot. The deputy skimmed through them, nodded, and let out a breath. Looks solid. I crossed my arms. She's wasting your time. She's been harassing me since the day I moved in. As if on cue, Karen appeared at the edge of the street, arms folded across her chest, chin lifted high. Officer, she called out, I hope you're documenting this. That man is refusing to abide by HOA safety codes. He's hostile, and that motorcycle is completely non-compliant with our aesthetic guidelines. The deputy turned toward her. Ma'am, I've reviewed his documentation. His property lies outside the jurisdiction of the HOA. There's no violation I can act on. Karen's jaw tensed. That can't be right. He's part of this neighborhood. He has to follow the rules. It took a few steps forward and opened my wallet. Let me help clarify things. I flipped it open, revealing my retired federal badge, the metal glinting under the porch light. Karen stopped mid-step. I'm Special Agent Mark Ryland, Federal Internal Affairs. Retired last month. I know the law inside and out, and I know when someone's weaponizing authority they don't have. The deputy gave me a sharp glance, then looked at Karen. Her complexion turned ashen. I continued. You've trespassed. You've left multiple false notices. You've filed fraudulent reports and involved law enforcement under false pretenses. If you do it again, I'll file a harassment claim and a civil suit. Karen's voice cracked. You. You should have said something. I was hoping you'd respect boundaries on your own. You didn't. So now this is official. The deputy stepped in. Ma'am, I'm going to need you to stop contacting this gentleman regarding HOA matters. He's not part of your association. This matter is closed. Karen stared at me, angry, humiliated, and uncertain for the first time since we met. Then she turned and stormed away, heels clicking sharp against the asphalt. I exhaled slowly, the tension finally lifting from the night air, but I knew better than to believe it was over. Karen had been embarrassed but not beaten, and people like her, they don't retreat quietly. I knew Karen wouldn't take the badge moment lying down. The type of person who weaponizes authority doesn't fold when confronted. They retreat, regroup, and retaliate. I'd seen it in dirty cops, petty bureaucrats, and narcissistic informants. Karen fit the mold perfectly. The piece lasted 5 days. On the 6th, the construction crew rolled in at 7 a.m., unloading wood panels, cement, and an industrial auger. By noon, a 10-foot privacy fence began rising along the boundary between my property and the HOA lots. No warning, no courtesy notice, and no drainage clearance. The fence hugged the grade too tightly, blocking the natural runoff slope that had guided rainwater safely to the nearby ditch for decades. That afternoon, after a sudden storm rolled through, my yard flooded 6 inches of standing water and a small creek forming beneath my back deck. I photographed everything, dated each image. Then I traced the contractor's permit from the stickers on their trailer. Karen had filed it under community improvement, claiming the fence enhanced aesthetic uniformity and privacy for HOA members. What it really did was turn my yard into a swamp. I sent her a letter, firm, factual, documented, no threats, just a request to remedy the issue within 10 days. No response. Instead, the next week I received a certified letter from the Silver Pines HOA, cease and desist order, damaging community property, through improper water diversion. Attached, a $3,750 invoice for erosion damage and soil restoration. I laughed out loud. Karen was flipping the narrative, accusing me of the flooding her fence had caused. She'd escalated the petty campaign into a full-blown legal bluff, but what she didn't realize was that I wasn't just a retired badge. I was still licensed, still connected, and still very, very good at uncovering dirt. The next day I went down to the county land assessor's office and requested a topographic survey of my parcel and the adjacent HOA lots. Took 20 minutes. Then I pulled the plat maps, deed history, and building permits for the surrounding properties. That's when I found it. Karen's fancy HOA clubhouse, built 3 feet past the property line. Same with 2 sheds and an irrigation line that ran right through the southeastern edge of my lot. No easement, no agreements, no legal right. She wasn't just petty. She was trespassing. And in the eyes of the law, that made her vulnerable. We returned home and got to work. First, I filed a land use violation with the county, backed by the new survey and photos. Then I sent formal notices to the HOA board, citing unauthorized encroachments and offering a solution. Purchase the occupied land at my price, $21 per square inch, or remove all offending structures within 30 days. 2 board members tried to reach out privately. One even came by with a pie and a sheepish apology. I wasn't cruel to them. I made it clear my problem was with Karen's abuse of authority, not the neighborhood, but I wasn't backing down. Karen, on the other hand, doubled down. She sent out a mass HOA email accusing me of extortion, misrepresenting legal boundaries, and threatening the social fabric of Silver Pines. Her words, not mine. She called for a community meeting to vote on emergency action, stripping me of lake access, petitioning the county to rezone my parcel, and protecting neighborhood safety. What she didn't expect was for half the HOA to start asking questions. Questions like, wait, he's not in the HOA, or, you mean all these letters weren't enforceable? And my personal favorite, he owns the lake access? The tide turned faster than I thought possible. 3 families formally withdrew from the HOA, 2 more contacted the county to review their own lot boundaries. 1 even emailed me directly, asking for tips on resisting Karen's kangaroo court. By the end of the month, the once pristine illusion of Karen's authority had cracked wide open. Her own board was fracturing. Her neighbors were questioning everything, and the fence that had flooded my yard, ordered down by the county, seems they'd never approved the full height, and the design violated shoreline visibility codes. Karen had to hire the same crew to dismantle at HOA expense. I stood on my porch with a cup of black coffee, watching the panels come down one by one. It was quiet, peaceful. The lake shimmered just beyond the trees, and across the street. Karen stood on her porch, arms crossed, pale and tight, dash-lipped. She hadn't spoken to me since the badge, not once, but I could feel that she wasn't done. Her pride was wounded, her grip slipping, and when people like Karen start losing power, they get desperate. For a few brief weeks, it looked like Karen might actually back off. The fence came down, the bogus invoice vanished, and the HOA, once her personal army, was now a fractured collection of uncertain residents, many reconsidering their membership entirely, without her usual echo chamber. Karen began to fade into the background like a storm cloud that had exhausted its rage. But the quiet didn't fool me. Karen wasn't retreating. She was recalculating, and sure enough, the storm returned this time, wearing a smile. One Saturday morning, a group of HOA members arrived at my driveway carrying folding chairs, coolers, and platters of food. They greeted me politely and explained that Karen had told them my yard, specifically my lakefront, was now designated as shared common space for HOA events due to a revised covenant vote. It was a complete lie. The lake access had always been deeded to my parcel alone. There was no legal avenue to convert it to community property. But Karen knew something else. Perception was power. If she could get a crowd down there, snap a few cheerful photos, and send out a newsletter claiming a community picnic had been hosted with full support, it would muddy the waters, literally and figuratively. I could have thrown them out right then and there. But instead I walked down to the shoreline with a camera and documented everything: license plates, faces, timestamps, all of it. I didn't say a word, just smiled politely and let them party the next day. I sent cease and desist letters to each participant, along with printed copies of my deed and lake rights. One by one I received phone calls, some apologetic, others defensive. Most said the same thing: we thought it was approved. Karen had lied to them all. I gave them an option: make a public correction, or face trespassing claims in small claims court. The emails came quick after that. 3 public apologies, 2 written resignations from the HOA, and 1 surprisingly heartfelt letter from a young couple who'd just bought in and had no idea what Karen was really doing by the end of the week. Karen's last play had exploded in her face, but the final blow came from the county. Turns out she'd forged a zoning map during one of her beautification projects to reroute stormwater lines without approval. When the real surveyors reviewed the documents I'd submitted during the fence dispute, the fraud surfaced. A county inspector knocked on her door the following Monday. She didn't answer, but the notice was posted in bold red on her door: zoning violation, formal review pending. The HOA held an emergency meeting that weekend. Karen didn't attend. She wasn't voted out, she resigned before it came to that. Word spread fast. Her house was listed quietly the next week. The for sale sign was small and tucked into a hedge, as if she hoped no one would notice, but everyone did. The morning the moving truck pulled in, I sat on my porch with a fresh cup of coffee and watched. She came out once, stood near the sidewalk and glanced my way. Our eyes met. She didn't wave, she didn't smile, but she didn't sneer either. Just silence, maybe the first honest thing I'd seen from her. By noon the truck was gone. So was she. A new couple moved in a month later, quiet folks, older, with a Labrador and a love for porch gardening. They brought over a basket of tomatoes and homemade bread their first week. We heard about what happened, the man said cautiously. Shrugged. All cleared up now. Well, he said, we're not interested in joining any HOA drama. We're just here for the peace and quiet. I nodded. You're in the right place. We stood in comfortable silence for a while, watching the sun shimmer over the lake. I hadn't bought this cabin for a war. I came for solitude, for space, for a sliver of land that didn't answer to anyone else's power trip. And now, it was finally mine. Clean, quiet, undisturbed. Karen's name faded from neighborhood whispers within weeks. The HOA limped along, but with most of its teeth pulled, it settled into a less aggressive, more voluntary role. Some residents dropped out entirely. Others began rethinking the very idea of control disguised as community. As for me, I kept to myself, but every now and then I'd see one of the older board members walking by and nodding politely like a soldier passing a higher-ranking officer. They never asked to see my badge again. They didn't need to. I'd made my point, and now I could finally enjoy what I'd come here for in the first place: freedom.